Hi, I'm Kiana. I'm 10 years old. Ever since I was 4 years old, whenever I went to the pet shop, I would cry because I saw dogs and cats that had their freedom taken away from them. I've always wondered why such little dogs and cats couldn't be with their moms. They must miss their mom. The mom must miss her babies too. When I would think about how sad they both must be, tears kept on pouring down my face. I was also worried about where they will be taken if they don't find a forever home. After that, I started searching online about pet shops and puppy mills. And I also learned things from people that do volunteer work and help animals that were abandoned. Animals aren't things. Us humans shouldn't buy or sell their lives. So I decided to write a story from a golden retriever's point of view about a pet shop. Please watch this story till the end. The Unwanted Pet. Hello, my name is Jewel. This is heaven. I came here after just 1 year in your world. It was a very short life. Today I want to tell you about my short lifetime. This is a place where animals that get sold at pet shops are born. It's a puppy mill. There are many cages stacked on top of each other in rows. The cages are too small for the dogs. This is where I was born, inside a tiny cage. My mother is a puppy mill breeding dog. Her sole purpose is to breed puppies for the pet industry. She's never been allowed to run outside on the grass. She's never been hugged by anyone. She is just forced over and over to give birth to puppies. She's never been loved by anyone, but she lovingly protects and takes care of us. In the cage next to ours and the one next to that, puppies have been born. The ones who were born before me are playing in their cages. I watched them and thought, that looks like fun. Sometimes a big person comes into our room. The person sometimes gives us food and water, but never shows us any affection. It's a tiny amount of food and water, and never lasts long. Our starved mother is only able to produce a tiny amount of milk for us. So we are always hungry too. When a big person comes into our room, all of the mothers become quiet and hide us. But for us puppies, we didn't understand why we had to hide at that time. But we soon understood why. One day, a big man came into our room, but he didn't have any food or water. Instead, he was carrying a cardboard box. He walked straight towards the cages and stopped in front of the cage next to ours. He stared at the puppies and opened the cage door. One by one, he took the puppies from their mother and put them in the box. Then he took the box and left the room. The poor mother cried out for her babies all night long, but she would never see them again. We saw this and clung tightly to our mom, thinking over and over, I don't want to leave you, Mommy. After that, we saw this process be repeated where puppies were taken from their mothers. Then one day, that fateful day arrived. As usual, that big person came into our room and stopped in front of our cage. He grabbed us with his big hand and forced us into the box. Our mother called for us. We called for our mother too. But just like the other puppies, we would never be able to see each other again. We were then loaded into a truck and taken away. The next place where the box lid was opened was a very crowded place. There were many other cardboard boxes. Then I was put into a different cardboard box that had the number 19821 written on it. I was moved and carried around so much that I soon fainted. When I woke up, the box lid was opened again. I thought that I had finally came back to the room that my mom was in, but it wasn't that room at all. It was a glass cage. The light was so bright that my eyes started hurting. My mom wasn't there. My siblings weren't here either. I was all alone. When I looked to my side, somebody was looking at me. I went close to her and asked her, "Who are you?" She replied by saying, "I'm Rose." "Where am I?" "I want to see my mom," I said. Rose's expression on her face turned sad and she exhaled. Then she started explaining. "We are at the pet shop. We are being sold to humans. It's really sad, but we'll never be able to see our mothers again." The moment I found out that I would never be able to see my mom again, I felt so sad and curled up in the corner of the cage. Rose continued talking. "Don't make a sad face like that. If you don't find the owner before..." Rose suddenly stopped talking. When I looked at her, there were tears pouring down her face. I ran towards Rose and asked her, "What will happen if I don't find an owner?" Rose took a deep breath and started talking once again. "You see, when I first came to the pet shop, I asked the exact same questions that you are asking me to a white kitten that was once in a cage that you are in right now." She told me this. "Look, can you see those cakes lined up over there? They look pretty yummy, don't they? Well, we are the same as that. Sometimes at nighttime, there are still some leftovers of those cakes. Do you know what happens to them? They get thrown away. The same thing will happen to us. If we don't get an owner by the time we are still little, we will get thrown away too." And after that white kitten explained that to me, she was put into a cardboard box and said, "My time has come." "Where will we be taken if we become trash?" I asked. "Well, nobody knows that, but there is one thing that I do know. And that is that the place we will be taken to is definitely not a joyful place. In fact, I think it's the opposite. That's because the person that takes us there smells very bad. He smells like suffering and sadness. So that's why you have to stop making a sad face. You have to stay cute and make happy expressions so that people will like you," Rose said. So I smiled. I smiled even though deep inside I was still crying. One day I woke up and I tried to say good morning to Rose as usual, but Rose wasn't there. I called for Rose again, but there was no answer. But I still kept on calling out for Rose. Then from somewhere, I heard a voice calling my name. "Jewel! Jewel!" The voice sounded so quiet, but it was definitely Rose's voice. The voice was coming from behind me. That place is at the back of the shop where the people working at the pet shop give us food and water. I saw a little box on the shelf, and Rose's voice was coming from there. "Why are you back there?" I asked Rose. But before Rose could answer, we smelled something very scary and sad that was filled with pain and suffering. Bang, bang. Somebody knocked loudly on the door. Then one of the staff came and took the box that Rose was in. When the door opened, the man from outside got the box and took Rose away. I screamed for Rose to come back in a very loud voice so that she could hear me, but she didn't say anything. And I could smell a strong scent of sadness from the box that Rose was in. From that day on, I couldn't smile anymore. I tried and tried, but I couldn't smile. Days, weeks, and then months passed. My body was big now. Nobody stops in front of my cage anymore. And so, that day finally arrived. I was put into a box just like Rose. Then I was taken away from the pet shop by the man that had the very bad smell. But I was smiling happily in the box. That's because I could finally meet Rose again. I would never be all alone and lonely anymore. When I thought of that, I somehow felt happy. A few minutes later, the car stopped. I looked outside through a little hole that was cut into the cardboard box. I could see a door, and I could smell a familiar scent. When I got closer to the door, I could tell that the familiar scent was Rose's scent. Rose's scent made me so impatient. I wanted to see her so much. But when the door opened, that feeling of excitement turned into fear. There was a very strong smell of pee and poop. There were dogs and cats that were trapped inside tiny, dirty cages that were stacked on top of each other. I couldn't tell what the dogs and cats actually looked like because of their hair had grown too long and made them look like strange creatures. And spread on the floor there were cardboard that was disgusting because of the pee and poop that made it so messy. I was then put inside one of those cages. "Rose, Rose, where are you?" I looked for Rose by looking at all the dirty cages that were stacked on top of each other, but I just couldn't find her, even though I could smell her. But then I realized the shocking truth. There was a shape of matted, dirty fur curled up in the corner of the cage in front of mine. It was Rose. Even from a distance, I could tell that she wasn't breathing. "Rose, Rose, how could such a thing happen?" I wanted to hug Rose so much that I reached my paw out of the cage, but there was no way I could reach Rose's body. Suddenly, the door of the room opened, and that man with the bad smell came in. I got scared and pulled my paw back in. Then that man opened the door of the cage that Rose was in, picked up her body, and threw it in the trash can like a piece of garbage. Rose really did end up in the garbage. Rose, you turned into trash? I wonder if Rose was in pain. I wonder if she suffered. I wonder if she was lonely. I wonder if she was sad. Tears kept on pouring down my face. Suddenly, I felt a breeze blowing from somewhere. Then I realized that something floated with the wind, and it landed by my feet. When I smelled it, I smelled rose. It was white and gray. It was a piece of Rose's fur. I then tightly hugged that tiny, delicate piece of rose. I wonder how long passed since then. I don't remember a lot of things. The only thing I could feel was that I was starving, and I was so thirsty too. My fur had grown long and matted so much that it irritated my skin, making my body hurt. I really wanted to see Rose again. I really wanted to see my mom. But after a time, I started losing my memories about them too. All I could do was breathe. Just breathe. Then finally, one very cold winter night, I died. I was put into a little black garbage bag and thrown away in the cold snow. And that is what happens to a lot of dogs and cats at pet shops. The poor mothers are forced to get pregnant and are treated like puppy-making machines. The puppies are separated from their mothers soon after they are born, and they will never be able to see each other again. Many of them end up in places called hikitoriya. Pet shops sell unsold dogs and cats to hikitoriyas. The person working at the hikitoriya only gives them a tiny amount of food and water, and the animals all die in hunger, pain, and sadness. The more people buy, the more animals will have to go through the same suffering as Jewel did. Dogs and cats aren't our toys. They're not things. They are our beautiful families. Please respect their lives. Don't buy, please adopt, for the dogs and cats' happiness.